Razzie is the best, probably the GOAT of all head coaches, right?
When we look at the game, a lot of the decisions around the scrum are wrong.
I'm going to have to call you out on it, Jim.
I'm happy for that, unless it's a dog shot and you flying out the line to fucking Judas someone.
Well, Jim, you mentioned it earlier. Should we have a bit of a chat around the new law amendments that have come in from you and your mates at World Rugby? They're all our friends, actually, but did you instigate these laws? Have you had anything to do with it?
What do you think?
Well, you claimed it earlier, so I'm just a believer, Jim.
Of course I haven't. No. But to be fair, we've spoken a lot about the crocodile roll, for example, on this. Why? I mean, it's crocodile. Firstly, what a shit name. But yeah, like that's the one for me that is undeniable that needed to go. Like it's a proper horror. Again, we've gone through the archives, Andrew, on this. We've spoken about it loads. Some of the worst injuries we've ever seen. So yeah, I mean, you can go through them if you want, but I know the South Africans aren't happy with one of them, obviously, with the free kick and the scrum situation. Don't understand the DuPont law. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, well, the first two, if we talk about the first two, the croc roll, which you said, that's common sense. The second one is common sense as well, the DuPont law. So all players have to retreat now from a kick before they're put onside, as opposed to just standing still, waiting for the guy that caught it to run 5 metres. I remember talking at length about the Bath Gloucester game when it was that mad clip going around where there's about 20 kicks and everyone just stood in the middle of the field. So I really like that one. That's common sense as well for me. Once a kick's been made by a team, everyone has to retreat until they're put onside. So hopefully you're going to see more counter-attacking, more disjointed defensive lines, which allow, the star players with X factor, steps, speed, all that stuff to be able to actually properly have a go and not fear, guys that are just stood 10 metres away from them, waiting for them to move and then go and get tackled. So that's a really positive outcome, I think, from World Rugby to speed the game up, see more ball in playtime, hopefully. And then the third one, and there are a few other minor ones as well that are going to be more trials in different competitions. But the third one is the no scrums from free kicks, where there has been absolute uproar on social media. And I'll get your opinion first on it, Jim. So you can get a free kick for foot up in the scrum. You can get a free kick for early engage. You can get a free kick given against you for wrong numbers in the line out. Obviously from a mark as well, which we saw in the World Cup, you can get a free kick from, where you can't take scrums now. What are your thoughts on it, Jim? Because I've got my ideas on it, but I'll come to someone that's heavily involved with World Rugby to see what their opinion is.
Wow.
And a massive fan of South Africa as well.
I am completely aligned with, who are my friends at the minute?
South
my
Africa.
paymaster, or no, I'm with the South Africans. No, I'm with the South Africans on this. And again, I'm a rugby purist. I see the benefit of dominant scrums. I love scrummaging as a player, even though I've spoken in the past about not having a scrum, but that's not me saying that I don't want a scrum. There's an argument to say that the scrum is not aesthetically pleasing, which is where all these new laws and where it seems the powers that be and other people want the game to go down this high tempo, speed, loads of tries. And the scrum's one of them. It's a dark art, Andrew. And me and you know we're close to the game, even though you were at 10 but look like a tight head. You understand when you're watching it, mate. When we look at the game, right, a lot of the decisions around the scrum are wrong. Like they really are. The referees are still making wrong decisions. I know they're trying their hardest.
I wouldn't say a lot. I'd say there's too many. But a lot is a big call.
Yeah, a lot's a big call. Okay. Well, I'd say maybe 40%. Okay. Maybe not that many, but there's a lot. There's a lot of decisions that are the wrong call. So I don't want to call them out, but maybe this then mitigates that part of the game where it's up for debate. Do you know what I mean? Whether or not, there's foot movement. There's so much going on at the scrum, isn't there? But
Producer Rob here. And before we get back to the action, let's talk about online security and VPNs. I trust NordVPN to keep my data safe, and you should too. With NordVPN, you can access rugby content from anywhere in the world, and you know that you're going to be doing it safely. And we've got an exclusive deal for RugbyPod viewers. You can get 4 months extra and a 30-day money-back guarantee. So protect yourself online and support the RugbyPod by signing up at www.nordvpn.com/rugbypod. Stay safe, stay connected. NordVPN has your back.
what I don't like is a team that isn't that dominant in scrum can, like you said, can cause a free kick straight away, so they're not going to get absolutely hosed, that knowing that it's going to be a free kick and therefore there is going to be no scrum, and they can actually defend if it's going to be a tap and go, for example, or if the opposition kick it or whatever. They obviously can't kick it out to get a line out and get dominance that way because the opposition will get the line out. So you actually started the sentence very smartly, which I knew you would do, around all the things you could do to manipulate a free kick around a scrum if you're not a very dominant scrummaging team. Does that make sense or not?
Yeah. Yeah,
Is that
it does,
the point you're getting at?
Yeah, it does, but I'm going to have to call you out on it, Jim. I understand your sentiment, and this is where I think there's a lot of confusion, right? So,
what's my sentiment first? What's my sentiment first?
In my opinion, your sentiment is it's trying to depower the scrum, right? And not reward a strong scrum. It gives a weaker scrum the ability to get out of scrummaging, right? Is that the gist of what you're saying?
Yeah, but that's not what I believe. That's what the law kind of is pointing towards. I believe a dominant scrum. There's nothing better, is there, than being behind Julian White and you're running over Andrew Sheridan and the sail pack. Like, there's no better feeling.
Yeah.
But so I don't believe that. I don't like this one. I loved it in the World Cup where South Africa called the mark and chose to take a scrum, dominate the scrum, and then we know what happened off the back of that. So I don't believe in this free kick law, but I understand why they've done it or why they want to do it. So
yeah, I mean, just in terms of what everyone understands it to be. So the natural reaction is to have uproar around. It's going to depower the scrum. It's not going to allow a dominant scrum to take all these scrums from free kicks. Right, that one you're talking about, the World Cup. It's happened once. Right, when someone's taken a mark, and it was a big occasion, don't get me wrong, and it had a big impact on the game. But if you think back, Razzie didn't even know. He had to phone up a referee, didn't he, before the game to go, actually, can you take a scrum from a mark?
He rang Yakko, didn't he, the week before? Yeah.
So I understand that. But this is the thing that when I've looked into it, and I've spoken to a few referees, of course I have all my friends.
Hello, Rosie.
But here's the thing, right? So everyone's like, oh, you can just early engage and you don't have to scrummage. Well, in the laws, the second time there's an early engage to give a free kick, it's a penalty. You can still take the scrum from a penalty, right? So if you have a penalty, you can elect to take a scrum. So in effect, what it's done is it's given one scrummage an opportunity to have an early engage, and the referees, the onus now is on the referees, right? So the referees have to be strong and understand, and probably going into games, understand that one scrum is bloody strong and one scrum might not be, but go into the game with an open mind that could change. But if you are getting a team early engaging more than once in a game, it's a straight arm penalty. So then off the back of that, that team can then scrummage with the penalty. So if they want to still have the dominance and exert that on the opposition, you can still do it. So it's going to be down to referees refereeing strongly. First one's a free kick, tap and go. Second time they do it, it's a straight arm penalty. And then you're giving away 50, 60 metres potentially to a kick to the corner, or you're given the risk of going for another scrum. And as you've seen, when you've got a dominant scrum, and you can scrummage from penalties, you take another scrum. Yes, there is a risk to it, but you can then exert that dominance, get another penalty. That leads to a yellow card. And then we know the route that goes down when teams have to go down to 14 if it ends up having to be uncontested, if they haven't got enough props because they're in the bin or whatever, and you can still have your dominance. So I don't think it's going to have that bigger impact on the game. The big one, obviously, is around the mark one, and South Africans have taken that to heart because they were probably the first team, certainly the first team in a big competition to elect to scrum from a mark.
And no one else is doing that.
Yeah, but it's happened once.
Georgia, maybe? I know.
Yeah, it's happened once in, how many thousands of millions of scrums have we seen? Or, how many times have we seen a mark in a game of rugby over the last 20 years? Hundreds of thousands, right? And one team took one scrum. And it had a big impact on the game. So, I can understand both sides of the argument. I can understand the frustration. But I actually don't think it's going to have that bigger impact and prevent a team, if you have got a dominant scrum, from losing that advantage. Because in reality, from a scrum offence, not straight in the scrum is going to be a free kick. And then...
Not straight
in a scrum. So putting the ball in not straight. Well, I know they don't ref it, but that is a free kick law. You'd be amazed, but that is a free kick law.
I know. But Andrew, like everything points towards, right, and we'll maybe talk a little bit later about Luke Pearce, Matt Carley, I think, like pushing the players to speed up the game. I was looking at the games at the weekend, some of the scrums that were dominant going forward and the other scrums getting hosed, whereas historically there'd be an arm out in favour of the attacking team going forward in the scrum for a penalty. They don't even do that anymore. Play away, speed it up, play away. So that you can already see they're pushing in that direction. And if these referees, which they will, because Luke Pearce will be refereeing big games going forward, like in the World Cup, like big internationals, and his mindset, as we know, speeding up the kickers, speeding up the scrums, is to play away. Like that's what he wants to do. So you're already depowering dominant scrummaging teams. So maybe it's been in the making for a while.
But that's subconsciously, I think, or consciously, just to get the ball away from the scrum. What referees now have to do, and I will hang my hat on this, is refs have to be dominant and have to reward the dominant scrum around teams trying to cheat. Like you go back to, and I'll go back to my days when I played, Wasps had a shocking scrum. And we always ended up, Leicester Wasps games pretty much always ended up in uncontested scrums via injury. Now there's different laws that have been brought in.
Hang on, just for the listeners, just do what you did
via injury.
Yeah, the rabbits.
And but that loophole got closed because, and referees have to be strong, but also coaches are going to try and coaches' jobs are to try and find loopholes and everything to gain an advantage for their team. Razzie is the best, probably the GOAT of all head coaches, right? In terms of what he's achieved, his innovation, and he'll find and look at ways, as will every other coach. And your mates with coaches, take Brett Deeks, for example, and it doesn't often happen for Leicester, but, if Leicester have got a weak scrum out, and they haven't most of the time because Coley's there, and they've got a good scrum historically, but they're not going to say, well, let's get into a big scrum battle because we can take these boys on if you've got a weak scrum. So coaches then adapt their game to suit the players that they've got. So if you're getting pumped in the scrum, and we've all been in games where, I remember playing for Worcester and I'm like, Ewan Murray is there and he might not have his head on because it's nearly time to go to church and pray. And we were getting absolutely pumped in scrums. We were like, just get the ball in and out. Let's get rid of it so we can play, as opposed to trying to keep the ball in. Same at times in other teams I played at. Whether you're going to be dominant or not, or you just need parity. So you talk about getting the ball in and out as quickly as possible. So coaches will try and find a way with these laws to get loopholes. And if you've got a weak scrum, you're going to try and find ways of managing that anyway before this law comes in. And then now you have to back the referees to be ultra strong. And if a team is trying to have a secondary early engage, it's a penalty. And then they have to be strong on it and they have to be held accountable, which... that's all we can ask for. And yes, it may, in one instance, depower a scrum from an early engage from one scrum, but I think overall, the scrum and the dominant side will still be able to continue to press home that advantage. But we shall see, James.
Well, we shall see. And there's other ones that I would have pushed through if I was at the top table. I don't like the held up maul. I don't like that. Or if a maul's going forward and players manage to manipulate, come up the side or come through and hold the ball up and collapse it, and then it goes into a scrum. I thought they might have changed that. But there's going to be closed trials. So in the closed trials, in the rabbit headlights, just so you know, the rabbit, the commas. So closed trials is going to be any World Rugby owned events, like the Pacific Nation Cup that's happening, the under-20s, for example. And they're going to look at like a few different law changes and manipulations. Some I'm happy with. I like the not straight at the line out. So, do you know what I mean? If it's not competed against, they just play on. Otherwise, it would just go to a scrum, won't it? Like not straight. I do like that one. They're going to make it quicker around scrum setup times and line out setup times, like 30 seconds to get in and out. That will probably be like the box kick. It's meant to be 5 seconds, but we'll give you 35 seconds. Just speed up as well. But you know what I mean? The 20-minute red card's the big one, isn't it? Because is there anything on that if you go in two-footed into a breakdown, or if you go in with an uppercut, or you feel like grabbing someone's winky woo? Is that like a red card? So it's just a red card, isn't it? 20-minute red card, then you can bring on someone after 20 minutes. Yeah. So I would have it like, go on.
I don't agree with that. Like, if you've offended enough to get a red card, the team shouldn't be allowed a player to come back on 20 minutes later. You know, I just don't agree with. I don't think it changes behaviours. And if that's what you're trying to do with the introduction of red cards for high shots, for dangerous clear outs, and I'm talking to a man here that absolutely ended Francois Lowe for Scotland, which should have been a red card, shouldn't it, Jim?
No, it should have been a red card. He did get stretchered off, but me and Francois have spoken about it, and he had a bad neck. That's what he said. He did. He had a bad neck, and I just basically, I was probably at my most powerful at that moment. But
was it a legal clear out? It was a tucked arm.
In today's game, no. Exactly. In today's, but then it was. They looked at it. They reviewed it back then. So they looked at it. But that's what I mean. Like, it is. Yeah, but it is for me and Andrew. I know it's changed. It's changed now around the high tackle, and there is a little bit more grace, if you want to call it that. I don't know what the word is, but they are more lenient, I would say. And I'm happy for that, unless it's a dog shot, right? Unless you're going out and you're flying out the line to fucking Judas someone. But it's like, if it was back in the day or a couple of years ago where... You remember like Danny Cipriani, Will Spencer, they were the kind of first two, weren't they? Like, they weren't red cards, even though they got red carded. But they're the ones, for example, where they're not Judas shots, it's a rugby incident, or however you want to package it. They're the ones where I'm like, okay, if a red card comes off the back of that, then maybe. But loads going on. I think we need to get to a point, World Rugby needs to get to a point where, right, this is what we're doing. These are the laws of the game. Yes, we're going to manipulate them slightly. And these are small manipulations.
They are small, but they're made out to be. Yeah, they're made out to be big things. But you got to understand.
That's social media.
Yeah, it is.
Most people wouldn't understand. Like the pomp one, the free kick one. Most casual fans wouldn't have a scoop around that.
But this is the reason World Rugby have to react and change things, is because coaches and players are becoming so intelligent, so in tune with loopholes in the laws. Like the DuPont one's a classic example. We used to play games of touch where you had to just keep retreating until you're put on side, and from kick games and stuff like that. Whereas now you could stand there, right? So World Rugby have had to react to the professionalism and the intelligence of players like DuPont. Then other coaches pick up on it and go, well, actually, that's the way the law is written. So we need to make the change. So the game will always evolve that way. The game has evolved over the last 4 or 5 years hugely as well, hasn't it? So, and this is all about, their fan-focused law changes to try and speed up the game, ball and play time up, and make it a better spectacle for fans to watch. So I think we've got to give it a chance. I remember there's a bit of uproar around the goal line dropout and various other laws that brought in, but they just become a habit and, part of, the psyche of the game now, don't they? So the only one I would have gone a step further with is, I think, when you look at the clock, right, and we moan about scrums taking so long to set and all this stuff, I think the clock should only start when the ball's in play. So that would create a massive amount of fatigue. So you have an independent, like the refs don't even look at the clock, do they? They just say time off, time on. Then they've got people in their ear that, the fourth official saying, right, that's time. So they're not the sole arbiter of the time, are they? There's a timekeeper. So do you go down the NFL route and have an independent guy on the sideline or girl controlling the time, and they automatically stop it? They don't have to wait for the referee to say time off. Any time the ball is out of play, it's dead time. So you can set the scrum. Scrum can take however long to set, but the clock only starts as the ball goes into the scrum or as the ball goes into the line out. And then you're creating a lot of fatigue because there's going to be a hell of a lot more ball in play time. And maybe there's a balance to the 30-second scrum and line out clock, which is actually quite hard to police if you just went the full hog and gave the timekeeper autonomy over it all. So, but that might come in further down the line. So they're fan-focused law changes, so hopefully we'll see a faster, better game. Because I think we all agree, when you're watching these games, and I know the weather's good and all this stuff, watching the games at the minute, you don't see many 6-3s, although Ulster were 6-3 up against the Scarlets at half time. But, games open up, don't they? And they're exciting to watch. The offloading game's gone through the roof, ball out the tackle, keeping it alive. So the game's in a great place on the field. We're just trying to add to it.
Well, let's just wrap this up, Andrew, around the closed law trials as well, because I missed a few off as well. So we mentioned the 30-second shot clock for the scrum and line out, but it's going to be 60 seconds now for the conversions, so 30 seconds less than there is currently. Here's a good one as well. Protection of the 9 at the base of the scrum, ruck and the maul. So there's no more Maro Itoje, a la Jim Hamilton, Kelly Brown back in the day, diving over breakdowns, whacking the 9's arm, which I think is a positive as well. Anything on that?
No, I agree. Just make sure Caden Doris doesn't kick it out of the scrum half's hands as well.
Yeah, there we go. We saw that. Hey, they say kick, he just flicked his ankle and the 9 dropped it. Here's another one. The ability to mark the ball inside the 22 from the restart. Like, who's doing that?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe
but you
that's
can't
just
take a scrum
for the purists.
You can't take a scrum though from it, Jim.
No, you can't take a scrum, so I don't really get that one. But I do get this one. The ball must be played after the maul has been stopped once, so just one stop at the maul, so play away. I don't know. Again, I'm a purist, but these are things that are being trialled in the World Rugby owned tournaments. So a few little manipulations. I like a good old manip on the back, and that's about it. But there we go. We're putting the worlds to right, Andrew.
We certainly are, James. We certainly are.
Rob, we missed any?
Yeah, so you've missed. So that they've said that on the November agenda, they're going to start talking about number of replacements you can have on the bench as well.
Mm. Rob, when you read all these, like, I struggle to consume all the information. As a Northern Rock, you just said agenda there. Have you ever used the word agenda in your life?
Never in my life. I don't even really know what it means.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, because this is all for posh people.
It's not.
Exactly.
Rugby's for all people, James. It's an all-inclusive game.
Oh, mate, you want to see some of the words that are used. It's like, I've got no idea. Even Rob in the running order puts a word I didn't understand, frenetic. Is that meant to be frantic or not?
No, it's frenetic.
Jim. No, they're two different words.
Different words.
All right, Rob. All right, mate.
But the one, talking about those agenda points for November, the replacements on the bench is a big one, isn't it? Because we're seeing players now trained to play 40, 50, 55 minutes and then just bring someone on to blitz the last 30, 35 minutes. And athletes have changed off the back of that. So that's a really interesting point, and we'll see what the topics are around. Are you going to reduce replacements? Is it too big a risk for injury? Can you reduce? You can have 8 on the bench, but you can only use 4 in a game. Unless there's an injury, then that brings up the old, oh, mate, you're injured, yeah? Wink, wink. Bloodgate. No, let's not talk about that.
Hammy's gone. Hammy's blown.
Yeah. And so it'll be interesting. It's really hard to get that back once it's gone as far as it has now with 8 replacements and, the way players are trained and coached and, the S&C side of it. But I think there is a big thing to say around there are too many replacements. But how you balance that with player safety and player welfare is a tough one for bigger brains than probably the 3 of us put together.
But you know what? That will bring us on to the next big thing, which will be around the Northampton-Gloucester score, because this...
that was a big thing.
Yeah, but when you talk about that, though, that's around the amount of games in a season. And it is almost the elephant in the room. It's something that I believe should be significantly less. So you need the replacements at the minute. If there's 12 games a year or 15 games a year, there could be an argument to say, right, you've got 15 players on the pitch, you've got 4 replacements if there's injuries or whatever. But if you've got a game, like if you're on a 6-day turnaround like Quinn's off Toulouse, mate, you need another 15 on the bench. Like 8's not enough. So again, it'll be interesting to see what the agenda points are. But anyway, that's my excuse for Gloucester. So basically, not enough subs is my excuse for Gloucester. Getting 9 points put on them at the weekend.
They could have had 40 subs and I don't think they'd have still scored a point.
Pod.
Rugby pod.